Statement. Minister for Disabled People, Mims Davies.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Today, and in British Sign Language for those watching on Parliament Live, I am delighted to deliver on the Government's commitment to transform the everyday lives of disabled people across the country for the better. We as a government are working to make this country the most accessible place in the world for disabled people to live, work and thrive. Today, I'm proud to announce another important milestone, the publication of the Disability Action Plan, which will actively make a difference to disabled people's daily lives. In December 2022, my predecessor, the Honourable Member for Corby, announced the intention to develop a new Disability Action Plan to set out the practical, immediate actions ministers across government will take to improve disabled people's daily lives. Following this, a huge amount of work has gone into this from my department and the Disability Unit, and I thank everyone involved. I have spent time, Mr Deputy Speaker, since coming into this role, listening, engaging and continuing to ensure the voices of disabled people are properly heard, as it is an important priority for this government. That is why, in July 2023, we consulted on the draft Disability Action Plan, setting out a range of proposals where we felt we could take immediate action or lay the foundations for longer-term change. We rightly wanted to give everyone, and most importantly, disabled people, disabled people's organisations and other key charities and stakeholders, the chance to have their say on the draft plan. The consultation ran for 12 weeks, and I am immensely grateful to every single person who took time to respond. In the consultation, we set out 12 areas for action. Each area proposed how the Disability Unit, together with my department and other government departments and partners, would take action to drive improvements in these areas. Since the consultation closed in October, we have been carefully working through more than 1,300 responses, which pleasingly showed broad support for almost all proposals. We have used these responses, along with the feedback from a series of events and discussions during the consultation period, to finalise the proposals, adding a number of new measures to respond specifically to these consultation findings. An independent analysis of the consultation findings will be published on gov.uk today, alongside the final plan when I conclude my statement. The Disability Action Plan, which we are publishing today, sets out 32 practical actions which I will lead across government to take forward over the next 12 months with disabled people, disabled people's organisations and other government departments and public service providers to improve the daily lives of disabled people. These actions sit across 14 different areas, aiming to better support disabled people who want to be elected to public office, include disabled people's needs more effectively in emergency and resilience planning, include disabled people's needs in climate-related policies, improve information and outcomes for families in which someone is or becomes disabled, make playgrounds more accessible for everybody, help our businesses of all sizes and sectors to understand the needs of and deliver improvements for disabled people. Explore if the UK, Mr Deputy Speaker, could host the Special Olympics World Summer Games in 2031. Improve support for people who have guide or assistance dogs. Help the government measure how effective its policies and services are for disabled people. research issues facing disabled people in the future so the government can be more proactive in addressing them, make government publications and its communications more accessible, improve understanding of the cost of living for disabled people, promote better understanding of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, UNCRPD, across government, monitor and report progress of the Disability Action Plan, and I can confirm today that we will provide Parliament with updates on our progress in delivering against these actions in the plan in both 6 and 12 months' time. The Disability Action Plan will be taken forward in parallel with the National Disability Strategy, published in 2021. This wider strategy sets out the long-term vision to transform disabled people's lives for the better. A written ministerial statement to Parliament on the 18th of September 23 provided an update on progress on those commitments. And taken together, the Disability Action Plan and the National Disability Strategy demonstrate this government's clear focus on improving disabled people's daily lives in the here and now and in the years to come. As well as the Disability Action Plan and the National Disability Strategy, the government is already delivering significant work in areas that disabled people have told us are a priority, including reforms to employment and welfare through Transforming Support, Health and Disability White Paper, the Back to Work Plan, and improving health and social care through the People at the Heart of Care White Paper. Further ongoing work by departments includes support with the cost of living through Help for Households, as well as the SEND and Alternative Provision Improvement Plan. Mr Deputy Speaker, today's new Disability Action Plan is another vital pillar in improving disabled people's everyday lives. Working with disabled people and their representative organisations and with my colleagues across government in my role as lead for the Disability Unit and chair of the cross-government Ministerial Disability Champions, we will take the immediate action now and in the coming months to achieve real and tangible improvements for disabled people and help to deliver on their needs and change disabled people's lives daily for the better, and I commend this statement to the House.
Opposition front bench, Vicky Foxcroft.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I want to thank the Minister for advance sight of her statement. This government have had consultation after consultations, different strategies published, but the sad thing remains the case. We have nothing that actually delivers a better life for disabled people. The Conservative Party manifesto of 2019 promised to deliver a national strategy for disabled people in 2020. They claimed this would be an ambitious strategy supporting disabled people in all aspects and phases of their life. So what have we actually seen? In January 2021, the government finally launched their disability service, which closed in April 2021, right at the start of the pandemic. Disabled people were disproportionately affected by the COVID pandemic, with 6 in 10 deaths being disabled people. They struggled to access food, PPE and social care, and many were shielding. So the question we must ask is, why was a national strategy for disabled people not published until the 28th of July 2021 in summer recess, when we had no chance for parliamentary scrutiny? So what I will say, I am grateful we have this opportunity today to respond to the Minister. Now, the Disability Action Plan does contain some positives. It attempts to address some of the well-known barriers disabled people continue to face through measures such as tackling guide dog refusals, raising the profile of assistive technology, and increasing support for disabled people to take part in politics. There's also a commitment to British Sign Language interpretation at all number 10 press conferences, something many will have remembered that I argued for on numerous occasions, so about time. And I don't think anybody here would argue that those are not important issues that the government can and should be looking at. But there is one glaringly obvious issue that this action plan fails to address. The top concern for disabled people right now is the cost of living crisis. And this is not just my assumption, it's what disabled people are telling me and what charities are finding on the ground. A survey carried out by Sense found that 85% of people with complex disabilities are worried about the rising cost of living. The RNIB noted in its initial analysis of the plan, it's disappointing that there's no mention of any support measures to address the cost of living crisis. Disability equality charity Scope has calculated that on average, disabled households face extra costs of £975 per month to have the same standard of living as non-disabled households. Energy bills, for example, remain high, which makes day-to-day living very expensive when you rely on specialist medical equipment or need to heat your home more than the average household. Now, yes, the government has also made the two disability cost of living payments of £150, but many disabled people have told me that these barely touch the sides, not to mention the fact that at the same time, many lost their home discounts. And this is exacerbated by the fact that our current social security system puts disabled people through multiple upsetting and dehumanising assessments. Far too often they are denied their legal entitlement unless they have the strength and support to go through the appeals process. Now, the government's white paper published last year caused a huge amount of concern by proposing to scrap the work capability assessment, leaving disabled people reliant on the flawed personal independent payment assessment. The Disability Action Plan does nothing to improve the assessment process. And without addressing these fundamental problems, the actions outlined in the plan feel like little more than tinkering around the edges. They need proper action that deals with all of the societal barriers that makes their life challenging. And can I say, they could have started today by reinstating the role of Minister for Disabled People to Minister of State.
Mims Davies.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Lady for her. I think there was a warm welcome in there somewhere. Oh, she's saying not so much. There we go. I want to reiterate to everybody watching today that this is not just another consultation. This is real, tangible action to change people's daily lives. 13 practical areas practical actions across 14 different areas about building a society that works for everyone. I think the Honourable Lady opposite is rightly pointing out that life is just too difficult day to day for disabled people and their families, and she is absolutely right, and I absolutely agree with her, and that is why we've taken in this round, alongside the wider National Disability Strategy, the opportunities that we can take. And I would love to boil the ocean and fix everything in the month or so that I have had in this role, but please be assured, no matter what level this role is perceived at, I have the convening power and the support across government. And I'm very delighted the Honourable Lady keeps pushing for my elevation in this House, which is delighting. I'm delighted about. But I must remind the House that under the previous Labour administration, the Minister for Disabled People was a Parliamentary Under-Secretary. I'm extremely proud to be a Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State, and thank you, and a very good one. I'll take that one. And it has been a mixed role under our government, and of course that doesn't mean that we do not take this role seriously. I take it extremely seriously. I've come to this role with my own personal experience of living with with my father, who became disabled, lived under the Court of Protection. My mum worked with disabled adults, getting them into work growing up. She was part of the early part of Riding for the Disabled and the early part of the Special Olympics movement. No matter what rank I have in this House, that's what brings my experience and my interest to this role. But I am delighted to again try to respond that, to those people watching, that it should simply not matter to them, that I am in this for them no matter what the paycheck or the rank. Now, the Minister for Energy and Consumers, the Honourable Member for Derby North, and I have met around the point that the Honourable Lady makes, and we will continue to engage because she is a disability champion across government, such as myself. And I would reiterate to those people watching, the cost of living payments start once again tomorrow, and of course 6.4 million people across the UK have been able to get those extra costs to their disability benefits, those £150 that the Honourable Lady mentioned. And of course it is a challenging time for everybody, hence the furlough scheme, all the support that we've given right across businesses and communities to try to keep people on their feet. And in fact, in 2022 to 25, £104 billion has gone to help in terms of the cost of living. And I would say to anybody watching, whether they had a disability, health condition or any other need, please look at the benefits calculator on .gov.uk. Look at the household support fund that runs for a full year till March. It's a whole 6 months longer than the previous one, although there is a huge amount of interest in it. Do make sure that they do contact their local authority on that. And I know many people with caring responsibilities or those looking after disabled people have been helped, so I'm delighted about that. And one final point, the Help to Claim service is there as well for us via DWP, working with Citizens Advice to make sure that those in need do not need to worry and that they know the government, both locally and nationally, is there for them.
I now call the Chair of the Equalities Select Committee, Caroline Nokes.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And my first point, I'm just sure that my constituent, the great Laurie McMenemy, will welcome as an ambassador for the Special Olympics the announcement that my honourable friend has made about that. But specifically, she has announced 32 practical actions across 14 separate areas. That gives an idea of the scale of the challenge of coordination and accountability. We know that there are disability champions across every government department, and we know, of course, about the disability unit within the Cabinet Office. But my specific question to her is, how is she going to make sure that the challenge of coordination is successfully completed? That when my constituents look at those 32 practical actions, that each of us in this House will know who to turn to and who to hold accountable if those measures are not delivered.
I thank my right honourable friend for the point around the Special Olympics. And when I was Sports Minister, I had the honour of meeting her constituent, and I know and share the passion that he has for such an important movement, which is potentially life-changing, and that's why I'm delighted that it's in this plan. Now, the actions on the evidence and the data that she asked about around the Disability Action Plan is there to improve the quality of existing government help data and to increase the insight into the needs and the barriers that affect disabled people's daily lives. And ultimately, we will be evaluating the impact and policies of these services, and we'll be using the existing data to monitor and assess the outcomes of the plan when they're available, and we will again start work towards developing more comprehensive evaluation. And I know in her role as the chair of the Select Committee, she will keep me absolutely measured on that myself in terms of my role. But I can assure her and the House today and all those watching that this is absolutely about learning and delivering on that change.
SNP Frontbench spokesman, Marion Fellows.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for prior sight of her statement. This Disability Action Plan isn't a plan, it's a mishmash of short-term policies. Yep. Some of the proposals are welcomed and should have been sorted out long ago. Others are unclear and simply don't address the most pressing concerns of disabled people. Yep. In my submission to the DAP consultation, I listed key areas that had been overlooked. Cost of living and welfare support, still missing. Even though these areas were consistently raised by disability organisations and individuals, The Minister says the Government will improve understanding of the cost of living for disabled people. What better understanding do they need? For the last 2 years, disabled people have been crying out for more targeted financial support to assist with their additional cost of living needs. The Minister said in her statement they will also promise better understanding of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities across government. What does that actually mean? In 2016, the UK Government was found to have systematically failed disabled people. It's still happening. The work capability assessment reforms will subject more disabled people to the cruel, punitive and ineffective sanctions regime. Why? If the Government are serious about improving the lives of those with disabilities, then they should start by scrapping the proposals ahead of the March the 6th budget. How much of this plan will actually be enacted before there's a general election? In contrast, the Scottish Government is acting within budgetary constraints to improve the lives of disabled people. Adult disability payment, child disability payment, the Independent Living Fund, with an initial investment of up to £9 million, will enable people with disabilities to improve their lives. Finally, the downgrading of the role of Minister for Disabilities, no offence, is indicative of this Government's disregard for people with disabilities.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her response. I'm glad the advance site at least was something to welcome. I would very much like to reiterate to those watching that this is one pillar, and it is one pillar of the work that we are doing to help disabled people to succeed, to make this the most accessible place to live, work and thrive. And that this plan is the work that we can do with all other government departments to take action. And the work capability assessment will be changed, and this in the engagement that I've done so far is very much about what disabled people feel. And I was actually in Aberdeen on Thursday chatting to some of our claimants and those working with the local charity. And many of those disabled people were so frustrated that they cannot get a chance to work, a chance to try things. This is not about punitive sanctions. It's about giving disabled people the opportunity to take part in wider daily life that we all take for granted. And this action plan is absolutely about that. I point to the Honourable Lady earlier to the cost of living support. Indeed, around 200 million in Barnett consequentials to her government, which I've consistently asked where the money is going and how they are spending it. For I would love to point that out to those who I met on Thursday. But what I would say is this is not about party political barneying in this chamber, and the Honourable Lady and I do share the point that this is about supporting disabled people's daily lives. And the reality is, I strongly believe these will change daily lives. We will report in 6 months, and if she knows more than me that the next election is before that, then it won't be me reporting, but the government will in the next 6 months and 12 months. And of course, the Honourable Lady and I will continue to be discussing these matters until that election comes, and I'm sure where we can work together, we will do.
Chloe Smith.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. May I draw the House's attention to my register of interests in respect of a charity to do with deaf people and to do with cancer. I welcome the Honourable Lady to her post, and I know from many years of working with her that she is a very capable minister who will take this job extremely seriously and give it her all. Disabled people have told me, and I think I've been very clear, that they need a senior and serious voice in government, and I'd like her to say a little bit more about how she will do that, how she will listen to disabled people and reflect their needs inside government. And echoing my right honourable friend, the chair of the Equalities Select Committee, can I just press her to say a little bit more about how she will make sure that disabled people's issues of accessibility are not an afterthought in government, but are put first so that inclusion is by design and that these important points are all achieved?
I thank my right honourable friend for her kind words and her incredible and impeccable support, both bringing the BSL Act through and the work that she has done in my department and the continuing interest that she shows. And this is the fundamental about this disability action plan today. This is about disabled people's daily lives and their needs not being an afterthought at any part across government, whether it's around accessible communications. And I'll be honest, coming into this role, I've found that side of matters and getting messages out extremely challenging. And that's what I will be taking forward in terms of the promoting accessible communications, monitoring the standards, the training, and making sure that there is full inclusion. And as mentioned today by the Honourable Lady opposite, the number 10 Downing Street briefs, when it's so important that everybody knows the central messages, they all need to be included. And that's why one of the actions is down to local resilience forums, having the right engagement on a local level in times of need. And I'm sure the Honourable Lady will welcome that too.
Chair of the Work and Pension Select Committee, Sir Stephen Tint.
Deputy, thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Select Committee called for a review of the underperforming Disability Confidence Scheme. It was delayed by the pandemic, but in October we were told that officials were refining the recommendations of that review. Can the Minister tell us what the plan says about disability confidence, and does it hold out the prospect of shorter waiting times for access to work?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And it was remiss of me earlier to not reply to my honourable friend about the strong voice across government, which of course is the Secretary of State who sits in the Cabinet working alongside me in terms of disabled people's voices. To the Chair of the Select Committee to respond. Access to work grants, helping towards those extra costs beyond those standard reasonable adjustments are really important for my department, as we smash the employment goal and we're trying to do more when it comes to disability employment. He's right to ask this point. And I think he's right to challenge disability confidence. It is not just a nice thing that you put on your website, and it needs to be actually delivering change for disabled people when it comes to the workplace. So we'll be looking at the disability employment goal. I am looking at access to work, and I will be looking at disability confidence, such as he has said the Select Committee has, and watch this space.
Justin Thomas.
I very much welcome these proposals, and I thank the fantastic Disability Unit team and the stakeholders who've helped shape these proposals, in particular for me around accessible play parks, where I've been working with organisations like Benjamin Smile and Mums on a Mission, both in my constituency, where Swindon is leading by best examples of how to make sure children's play parks are accessible by all, and hopefully we can make that a given across the whole of the country. Now, one of the key parts of the National Disability Strategy was that there would be an annual review so that we could be held to account where we had achieved, where we needed to work harder, and to also set out the next range of ambitious targets, coordinated by the Minister through the departmental disability champions. Can I have some assurance that, as good as these proposals are, we will see those on an annual basis with a new fresh set? And I will also join the calls to see you rightly made as a Minister of State, because if you are going to coordinate the efforts across government beyond your direct influence, you need to have that gravitas in that room to demand what is needed to remove those barriers for disabled people.
I thank my honourable friend for his experience and insight, which I'm very, very grateful for. In terms of the Ministerial Disability Champions, I have met with them already to ensure that disability inclusion is a priority and ultimately delivered in their department's work, that they continue to be accountable for their contribution to the development and delivery of the National Disability Strategy and indeed the Disability Action Plan, and that they continue to show their commitment to disabled people by creating those opportunities, protecting their rights and ensuring all that we have spoken about today in terms of contribution to society, turning to the point around making playgrounds more accessible, and my honourable friend's impeccable work in his constituency. There's a lot of information around disability inclusion on organised sport, physical activity, exercise, and information on making playgrounds accessible is unfortunately not easily available. We want to make it available, we want to work with the partners that he's described and get best practice amongst local authorities, and that will be part of this, and we'll be measuring in 6 months and 12 months the delivery of this plan.
Work and Pensions Select Committee Member, Debbie Abrams.
I just want to gently say to the Minister, who have huge regard for, that we need to recognise there's a context of this Disability Action Plan. Between 2011 and 2020, the equivalent of 20 billion being cut from working age people, predominantly disabled people who, on an individual basis, lost thousands of pounds every year. And my honourable friend, the member for Deptford, pointed this out. It's one of the reasons that in the JRF poverty report for 2024, they identified specifically that disabled people are disproportionately have been impacted and are likely to suffer deep poverty and destitution. But in terms of the government's commitment to this, I hope the Minister can reassure me, it is approaching 2 years since the EHRC found that the department was discriminating against disabled people and issued a Section 23 notice, and we still have had nothing from this, from the department on this. So could the Minister reassure us that this will be being published in the next few weeks and certainly before the 2nd year anniversary?
Minister.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her points, and I know she's long been pushing for a response, and I will write further to her on that matter. In terms of the support via cost of living, as I said to the Honourable Lady opposite, there's been substantial support there, but I do understand the point around disability costs, which has been mentioned today, which is again why I point people to the Household Support Fund, which is exactly there for these additional costs, and in fact we're doing some research and evaluation on where that support is going. But it is making a difference to people's daily lives, and I want those people to know beyond the cost of living payments, which start again tomorrow, there is further support there through their local authority or through the devolved monies.
Mr. Kent.
Mr Deputy Speaker, can I welcome this Disability Action Plan, which follows the British Sign Language Bill, the Down Syndrome Act supporting 2 million disabled people more into work, and the cost of living disability payments, which begin tomorrow. I will be holding a disability forum in my own home county of Rutland on the 28th of June, where I will bring together people living with disabilities, their families and their carers, so that we can create a plan for our county. So can my right honourable friend, who has brought such strength and passion to this role, please share what support might be available to help roll out such action plans at a local level?
I thank the Honourable Lady for a really important point. Something announced here in Westminster sounds great, but what does it mean in Rutland and beyond? And I think this is a really important part of the next steps. We, of course, have the support in our job centres and our engagement with further work coach support in job centres and those disability employment advisors offering advice and expertise. And I mentioned access to work, disability confident and our future employment goal. So I'd be delighted, in fact, if she sent me an invite, I'd love to listen in to what her constituents and those advocating would like to hear and understand.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I note the statement of the Minister says promote better understanding of the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is very welcome. How exactly is she going to do this with each government department, both in their role as employers of a very large number of people around the country, but also in the policies that they promote in disability benefits, for example, including those with mental health, as well as housing policies and the provision of housing for people with disabilities? And if she finds that departments are not coming up to the mark in achieving what she wants of them, how will she ensure that they are forced to carry out the policies that she wants to ensure there is real equality for people with disabilities in our society?
I thank the right honourable gentleman for a really important point in terms of cross-government working and to deliver on this action plan. I stress to those people watching as well, this is one pillar of the work that we're doing. But for example, we will be working to increase disability inclusive approaches to emergency and resilience planning, climate adaptations, working strategically with teams there. We'll be working with DEFRA, the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, always to make sure that disability inclusion is increased. And as I've said, it's increasingly vital that those ministerial champions deliver and are accountable in each of their departments, and that's what I will be doing, so that disabled people can benefit from everything government and community does and can contribute rightly to every aspect of our society.
Sir Alex Shelby.
Mr Deputy Speaker, may I welcome the statement from my honourable friend, and I'm very pleased of the particular section about helping businesses of all sizes and sectors to understand the needs and deliver improvements for disabled people. But one area of people who feel that they should be recognised in disability plans are people with advanced endometriosis. And when I led the debate on endometriosis in the workplace, some of the issues that women face when they're at that advanced stage is really a disability, but because it's not listed as a disability, many lose their jobs over poor attendance through sick days, etc. So I very much welcome the strategy, but can I ask my honourable friend to look at to expand, especially in the area of women's health, areas that are totally disabling for them?
I thank my right honourable friend, and research shows that disabled people are more likely to experience difficulties and barriers accessing products and services, and it results in that lack of confidence, whether it comes to the high street, going to work, etc. So the consultation proposes a voluntary accreditation scheme for businesses to train their staff in disability awareness, and the benefits to business are absolutely clear. Purple says the spending power of disabled households is at £284 billion a year, and the honourable gentleman will know that I lead on women's health and keeping women in the workforce wider in DWP, and the menopause, the debilitating impact and the wider menstruation impact is something that was raised in the oil and gas sector, for example, in Aberdeen just last week, and it links into our women's health strategy, and this is the second time in the chamber this condition has been mentioned. So I'm happy to meet with him and others in terms of how we link this into our understanding.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. There's much to welcome in this plan, but there's also a few things that are missing. And one specific thing which the Minister mentions amongst her 14 action points is to help businesses of all sizes and sectors understand the needs and deliver improvements for disabled people. One of my constituents in Edinburgh West came to me recently because as a user of an electric wheelchair, she has found it almost impossible to know what businesses, specifically hotels, mean by accessible. It means something different to every business. You can find yourself, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're a wheelchair user, going into a business and then unable to move around. If you're in a hotel, you can get to the hotel room, but you can't move around within the hotel room. So can't you tell us, please, if the government is going to take action to set out exactly what is needed if you're going to use the term accessible?
I thank the honourable lady for the point, and this also goes for businesses in terms of recruitment. They talk about recruiting differently, they want to, and then they regress back, and it tends to be a lack of understanding. The disability unit will work to better define the issue in terms of what businesses need to do and build the consultation responses of the main issues raised, and that also then will look at those evidence gaps and where existing schemes are already doing things and there may be duplication, and as the honourable lady says, where people think they're doing the right thing, as I described earlier, versus what the reality of the experience for the disabled person using that service or having that day out or that night away actually is. So this is part of the work of Action 18 and 19 in the plan, and I'd be delighted to hear from her what that means to her constituents.
Mark Pritchard.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome this disability action plan? The Minister mentions cost of living, and I wondered what more can be done to speed up the transition from those living on disability living allowance through personal independence payments. One of my constituents just waited over a year for that transition to take place. On the point of access to playgrounds, can I welcome that as part of the action plan? But following on from my honourable friend, the member for Swindon North, and indeed the right honourable member, the member for Islington North, what more can be done to ensure that these points are delivered both at a local government level, perhaps making it a statutory responsibility for local councils to provide disability access for at least a minimum level for some play areas and playgrounds, and also at a national level, what cross-departmental committees or working is she already involved with?
I thank my honourable friend for some really pertinent points in regard to the playgrounds. That's why there will be a portal and some best practice where some local authorities are already delivering on that, Mr Deputy Speaker, so that others can learn from that intervention. And ultimately, families can enjoy and play together in the way that everybody else would take for granted, and that should be available in every community. He mentions the wider structural changes, and I'm happy to look at that specific case. If he will kindly send me the details, I'd be very grateful for that. And that's why this is part of the wider National Disability Strategy, the changes to the work capability assessment. In the engagement that I've had with disabled people and their organisations, there are some very vulnerable people who are very keen to be protected and supported, and there are other groups who are very keen to get the opportunities and chances they need. And this government is determined to get the right approach to everybody in every community.
Time, Deputy.
Thank you very much. Mr Deputy Speaker, according to the charity Sense, 85% of people with complex disabilities are worried about the rising cost of living. The Minister's predecessor said that the Disability Action Plan would outline the immediate action this government would take to make the lives of disabled people better. So, Minister, why does the Disability Action Plan do so little to address the cost of living crisis now?
Well, I point the honourable gentleman to the next stage of the cost of living payments, which start tomorrow, again to the Household Support Fund, which we see evidentially is supporting carers and those with disabilities in a really difficult time. We have ensured the energy price guarantee remains in place as that additional safety net until March this year. It will hold bills down and hopefully help as energy prices fall for low-paid workers or disabled people, as he describes. The government is providing millions of households with further cost of living, as I say, and a £104 billion package to support households until 2025. And I am engaged with the other disabled disability champion in the Energy Department, the Honourable Member for Derby North, on this matter, which is wider than this specific plan, but he can be assured that we continue to engage on this matter.
Virginia Crosby.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. May I say clongavaciadau, congratulations to the Minister on the launch of the Disability Action Plan. I visited Ysgol Llanfair in Motherwell on Holyhead, where the teacher, Kerry Wynne Jones's Year 6 class, excitedly shared with me how important playgrounds are to them and their families. They would love a splash park. Can the Minister reassure students like Phoebe Owen and Alicia Hughes that she will work with her devolved partners to ensure that playgrounds across Ynys Môn are made more accessible for everyone?
Well, diolch yn fawr and iechyd da, because that is a fantastic opportunity for those local children to have a really inclusive and positive playground. Absolutely. This afternoon I wrote to my counterparts in Welsh Government to tell them about the plan and to thank them for their engagement. We do want to support action in all playgrounds to make sure disabled children and their families have that sense of belonging, that experience, and there's no more belonging when it comes to the Isle of Ynys Môn. And we want to make sure that that learning comes from play, and that's why that portal and that best practice when they're designing that splash pad could be more inclusive than anyone could have dreamed of before today.
John MacDonald.
Will the action plan address the specific issue raised by John, the excellent John Pring of the Disability News Service, which is the 14-year pattern of the DWP dismissing the concerns expressed by coroners over the deaths of disabled claimants?
I thank the honourable gentleman for the point he makes, and of course we in our department deal with some very vulnerable people in very difficult situations, and of course this is a time of 30 plus actions and some changes which are extremely positive, and we have made sure that we put safeguarding at the heart of what we do, and I'll write to him specifically with regard to that matter.
Leila Moran.
Deputy Speaker, the Botley Road in Oxford has been closed for nearly a year with another 6 months to go. And while that's an inconvenience for residents, for our disabled residents, it has been an absolute blight on their lives. Because the one thing that was put in place for them was reduced to just 1 hour in the day, and they have been felt completely left out. Some haven't even left their homes. So will this plan include provisions for those local residents affected by infrastructure projects? In this case, it's being run by Network Rail, who are making the decisions. I can't see where that's included in the plan.
Well, I'm happy if the honourable lady sends me the details to have a look at that specific issue and that particular group. In this Disability Action Plan, the government truly believes that considering disabled people's needs in policy making makes for better and more inclusive outcomes for everyone. And that's why in Action 7 to 11, reaching net zero by 2050 is engaged in there, and how we work around clean air zones and ultra low emission zones, making sure that disabled people's access needs are fully balanced when creating such schemes as well. So I think when it comes to access, whether it's road closures, whether it's rail, that's exactly what this plan is about, and I'm keen to look at the details she mentions.
Tulip Sadiq.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. My constituent, who has been hospitalised multiple times over the last 20 years because of a result of a serious bipolar disorder, was deemed ineligible for PIP. He received absolutely no help navigating the complex PIP process and had to go through a lengthy tribunal until he was finally deemed eligible. Could I ask the Minister, how will this plan bring about any meaningful change when her government has repeatedly failed to get to grips with these long-standing failures in the disability benefits system?
Well, I thank the honourable lady, and that sounds a very concerning case. And as I say, this action plan is a part of a wider structural reform when it comes to health and disability. And from our research, we know that 1 in 5 people with a disability or health condition are not expected to engage in work preparation, but they might want to work. And as she says, the constituent she talks about is seemingly very vulnerable, and this is a difficult process to navigate. That's where our help to claim service and our support is there for those vulnerable claimants, and we do have ways of supporting vulnerable claimants. So I'd be very happy to look at this particular issue for her. And of course, the white paper transformations that we're looking at will have a new potential passporting to UC health element through PIP. So there are some changes, but I'm very conscious in every PIP delay or every PIP challenge, it is a person, a situation, and it's very concerning, and I am making this priority in this role.
Justin Madders.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I want to follow up on the earlier questions on accessible play areas, which I'm very pleased are a part of the Disability Action Plan, because I don't think having a website is going to go far enough in actually delivering on what we all want to see, which is far more accessible play areas. There needs to be a strategy backed with resources underneath this website to actually deliver on the aspiration we all have. The Minister will know local authorities are absolutely on their knees in terms of funding. So will the department be putting in any money themselves to actually make sure that all our children are able to access play areas?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his point, and there is work undertaken by Sport England around best practice, and that's exactly about opening up that portal and making this a reality for youngsters. We know that all children's well-being is absolutely about their social activities and their opportunities to learn through play, and this plan should not and will not be some kind of talking shop and no change. So I'll be keen routinely making sure that this information, when it comes to accessible playgrounds, makes a difference, and that will be part of the reports that we do at 6 and 12 months.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for her statement? It's most helpful. Does the Minister not agree there's something that a number of my constituents, disabled constituents, have raised with me? I'm sure that is replicated in every constituency across the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which is not clear in the action plan. Is the action that is needed to help insulate homes, to aid with energy costs for those who need more help upgrades, more help with energy costs on an ongoing basis rather than the one-off bonus payment. Minister, what consideration can government give to the issue of a warm home for our disabled, which is something they don't necessarily have currently?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his point, and I wrote to counterparts in NI again today, as I did with all devolved groups, and I think he's absolutely right in terms of the challenges that we've heard in the chamber today. So I'm happy to look at the extra support that is available for his community, and I think, as usual, he makes a pertinent point for making sure that everybody has that warm home and that support, and that, of course, it is devolved in a slightly different way in his community, but I'm happy to share the details with him.
Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The truth is that disabled people have been at the sharp end of this government's cruel policies. It's austerity, it's a tax on social security, it's a tax on public services. It's also the case that disabled people are amongst those hardest hit by the cost of living crisis. But this disability action plan fails to introduce the emergency measures demanded by disabled people to directly address the cost of living crisis, never mind the decade of attacks that they've faced. Isn't that the case?
Well, I do not appreciate the characterisation of... Excuse me, the honourable gentleman seems to be distracted. I was just saying, Mr Deputy Speaker, I do not understand the characterisation the honourable gentleman opposite has offered. This is 32 actions over the next 12 months in 14 different areas where we've listened and engaged with disabled people. We've heard what they want, and this is in parallel with our national disability strategy. And this is exactly the kind of rhetoric that the government is against you and not supporting you, that disabled people makes them feel more isolated and concerned for their welfare. So I want to say very squarely to people listening today that this is absolutely a focus on what we can do to make sure disabled people's daily lives are better, and that there is support and help out there for them. And this is one of the pillars of support this government is absolutely committed to. And I'm sure when he reads the full plan, he'll see that this will make disabled people's daily lives better. And that's what this government is determined to deliver.
Order. 1 moment, please. I'd like to observe the courtesies. I thank the Minister and the Opposition front bench for their presence. That concludes the statement on the action plan. Point of order, Mr Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to you for allowing me to make